Hello everyone, this is FlatLine, and today I'm going to be doing a PvT on our 7th daily. I already covered up a little bit about the late game PvZ with the swarm hosts, how to deal with them, and then the previous one, the 6th one, was about late game PvP. So we're going to cover up PvT late game, and maybe the mid game as well, because it seems like the mid game is probably the most important piece of this matchup that gives a lot of Protoss trouble. So the mid game is usually around the 10 plus minute, 10 to 15 minute, and that's around the time Terrans start to become pretty aggressive. That's when the medevacs pop out. That's when they have the option to drop and do a lot of harassment to you from one base to the other, and it gets really difficult to kind of pinpoint them in a single location, try to defend everything on time. So I'm going to try to cover up as best as I can on how I defend it, and then you can try to maybe take some of that part that you agree with, or something that you're like, hey, you know what, I like that part, let me add that to my build, let me add that to my style. So he is opening up with the standard Reaper opening, and I will be opening up with a 1 gate expand. And let's see, I don't think there's anything too important going on in the mid game, or in the early game at least. There's my Nexus, there's his command center. So the mid game, like I said, before the mid game there's an early game stage for Terrans, and usually it consists of either doing a Marine Rod or pressure, or just a Marine pressure, or a Marine pressure with a Widow Mine drop follow-up, or with a Hellion follow-up, Hellion medevac follow-up. It's usually how the mid game works. Baby Sky is going to be my opponent here. He's going to be the Red Terran, and he's going to go for the 2 racks build. This 2 racks build allows him to make a lot of Marines, but make a pretty good decent amount of Marines, but the biggest factor into the 2 racks is that his factory will be a lot quicker, so he's going to be able to get his drops out early, which means he's going to be able to play pretty aggressive in the early game stage of this game. And for me, I'm pretty much playing normal myself. I'm going to be opening up with a Forge build, a Robo build. There's this little Marine pressure that I was talking about. Did kill a couple of those probes, unfortunately, but not too big of a deal, right? So you can see he's getting his starport here, and there's his reactor. You can see how this is really quick. Like, he's gonna be able to be at my base, I want to say like 9:30. He should be able to have medevacs out, and that's gonna be really annoying. So ways I defend drops. I'm gonna look at the units tab real quick, kind of showcase exactly what is the key things when it comes to the mid game PvP. So I'm gonna pause it here. Alright, so probe count's pretty much what it's typically gonna be. I'm gonna have more workers than him, and that's because of the use of the chrono boost. But the biggest thing, observer count. I have 4 observers. Generally, I would like to go up to 5, especially on this map. But 4 is a really good number. So you want 1 outside his natural. Oh, you know what? I think he killed this one. I had 1 out here, so maybe I did have 5 and he killed 1. 1 right here outside his natural, 1 outside my natural. And on this map, you want to have 2 on this side, because this is a pretty wide open area where they can drop. So I'm gonna have 2 observers here. Usually though, on other maps you can have just 1 on one side and then the other one on the other side, and that's why the number 4 is pretty good. On this map I like to go up to 5, so that way I can have 2 observers on this side, 1 on each outside the naturals, and then 1 on the bottom side, so I can see the drops coming from there. If it ever comes to a point where you're losing, like let's say you lost an observer, the least important one would be the one outside your natural, like this one. So if you need to replace, let's say, this observer, you would use this observer to go replace it, if anything. The reason why this one's the least important one is because usually your army is going to be right here. So the only reason why you want observers is to catch drops. That's the main priority. And then you want one outside his natural for sure, so you can see what's moving out, what is he making. You also want to see, is he pulling SCVs, is he transferring SCVs, because if he's transferring SCVs, you can safely assume that he took a third base. There's his drop now. Unfortunately, I don't think I saw. Oh, I did see it. Or maybe I heard it. You can see this, saw this. So I react to this. Now, whenever you see a drop and you know and you're confident you can defend it, you don't want to show your stalkers immediately. You want to kind of keep them in the dark, so that way when he commits to the drop, you can just pounce on it, kill the medevac, kill the marines, and you're through with it. If you keep them on the edge of the base, then the Terran's gonna be like, oh, he has defense, let me just back out. So you don't kill the medevac, you don't kill the marines, you just force him to retreat, which is still a good thing, but it's just a an extra bonus if you're able to kill it. Now let's say if you're not confident, then go ahead. Let's say instead of having these 6 marines, 6 stalkers like I do, let's say you have 4 stalkers or 3 stalkers and you're like, please don't drop on me, then you probably do want to have your stalkers up on the edge, so that way he has to like rethink about this. Yeah, let's see. Alright, so another thing you want to learn about is third timings. So third timings, there are a lot of them. And I'm just going to cover up the Colossus opening. So the standard third timing is typically whenever they get a third. Typically whenever you have 2 Colossus out. And I think when you have 2 Colossus out, 1-1 should be finishing up. Yep, and as well as your extended Thermalance. That's generally how it usually is. Those are the general rules. The safest one, if you had to pick between those two, would probably be the Colossus one. The reason why, if he went for a quick third and you are like, okay, time for me to get a third base, it's really risky if you're going double forge Colossus and you've been skipping production throughout the game. So I'm just gonna back up a little bit here to kind of showcase what I mean. I think let's go right here. I think this is a good number. Alright, let's look at the army supply. You can see he has way more than me, but I have more workers. The reason why he has more units than me is because I've actually been skipping units. I only have 2 sentries and 3 stalkers. That's all I have for, like, look how long it's been. I have not worked in any units in a very, very long time, because what I'm doing is I'm trying to rush for my tech, I'm trying to get my forge, I was trying to get my probes, and then I'll add on my gateways. And if you're going Colossus, you want to have up to 6 gateways, at least 6 gateways for the expansion. So if you're skipping production like I am, it's really risky for you to take a third base and go Colossus, because you're not going to have that big of an army. So if he pounces on you with all of his units and just thins at you, I don't know how you can be able to hold it, especially when it's wide open. Now, if it's a very narrow choke point at a third base, then maybe you can do it. Maybe you can pull it off because you can use your sentries to kind of cut up the units. Okay, so let's go back. Let's jump forward to where we were at. So I have my third, my 2 Colossus, have stalkers over here. And then you want to have your probes starting to put up proxy pylons, because this is around the time you want to start playing, sending some warpins to kind of help. Looking around, getting storm. So this is another thing you need to learn, is about your storm timing. You need to figure out what is your comfort zone. So for me, it's 2 Colossus. Some people like to go up to 3 and then go into Templar, which is totally fine. The reason why I like to go for 2 is because the earliest SCV pull all in that I've seen, to get Storm on time, it has to be after the second Colossus, and that's a dedicated 2 base Viking SCV all in. So 3 base, I'm pretty sure you can get away with 3 Colossus. Now let's say if you don't want to go High Templar and you just want to stay on Colossus, that's totally fine. Just note that you need to be really careful whenever they do an SCV all in, that you kind of focus fire the Vikings and try to take them out with your Stalkers as soon as possible. As soon as possible. You don't need charge. You want to get blink in that situation. Alright, the next thing is Warp Prism. Around this time, whenever you go on High Templar, you're going to see yourself stock up on a lot of minerals and you're going to be very low on gas. So it's time for you to invest the minerals into stuff to help you. 1, defend, like photon cannons here. 2, your production, which will be extra gateways. And then 3, the side of harassment, proxy pylons, and warp prisms. All of them have something in common, and that's they're all mineral based. So you can dump your minerals in that scenario. You don't really need to have more zealots, right? Don't really need more zealots. So to know when you need to warp in zealots and when not to warp in zealots, it's really important. I'm not sure if you saw the previous daily, but it's the same thing that applies in PvT. You want to try not to warp in unless you have to. Unless you have to. So if they're going to do a push and you know that 10-minute timing, that's when you know, okay, around before, like a little bit before 10 minutes, that's when I need to start warping in units, so that way I can defend his 10-minute push. Cool. But whenever it hits this mid-game area or this stage of the game, you need to figure out when is it safe, when am I safe, and the way you can see that is you gotta have vision. You gotta keep tabs on your opponent. Is he moving out? Is he doing an SCV all-in? Is he doing all this? Like, obviously they can just instantly decide to do an SCV all-in, but it wouldn't work because 1, you already have Storm. So once you're able to secure Storm, you don't really need to have Zealots. That's when you can stop making Zealots. That's when you can start adding on gateways instead. So instead of warping in more Zealots, just have more gateways. Now if you want to do a 3 base push and put on aggression, then you would be like, okay, let's not warp in, let's not make these gateways, let's warp in Zealots. We want a big army to hit at this as strong as possible with 3-3 or something like that. Then go ahead, do it that way. But you need to make sure you have a clear, concise mindset of what you want to do from the mid game going towards the late game stage of PvT. If you are half-assing both things, where you're like, okay, let's make a lot of gateways, let's try to get all these zealots as well, let's try to do this push, you will realize your push is not as strong as it can be because you're not going to be able to warp in. You're not going to be able to have as many zealots because you're using the minerals as well for more gateways, for expansions as well. It won't be as strong. You just do not have the money to do that. Because you also have to realize is because whenever you do that push, you do that heavy push, when your units die, you're going to try to replenish it as soon as possible. And the unit that you usually replenish with is Zealots. I want to engage because I have Storm. Simple as that. He does not have any Ghost. Now you can see I don't really I could care less about the Colossus. Obviously I could have pulled them back a little bit better, but the fact that I have Storm here and lose all those High Templars, it's not the best. But I'm a little bit busy. I have some Zealots over here and I have some Zealots over here trying to harass, trying to pick them apart. Like I said, in the mid to late game stage is around whenever you're almost 3-3. Once you have 2-2, that's about the time you should be able to play aggressive, because that should be the time you should have Storm. Once you have Storm, you should be able to have some kind of map control. Now if the Terran is playing super aggressive, this Storm or the High Templar should be able to push him back to his base where he has to play a little bit more passive until he gets Ghost. If he's playing too aggressive, he's just recklessly giving up the units to Storm. My mineral is really high because I'm trying to expand, but I have to force to cancel. And like I said, you generally don't want to have to warp in Zealots. Like, I haven't seen myself warping anything in a long time. You can see these warpins are still there. Just because I had the he's not really attacking into me. Now if I feel like he's going to attack into me, then yes, I will warp in zealots. But because I have storm, I feel like he's a little bit hesitant to attack into me until he's able to get ghost out. You can see he does have some ghost on the way. So right now I have 3-3. That's my advantage. That's the other reason why you want to have observer over his army. You can see he's only 2-1 or 1-2, and I'm 3-3. So I have a huge upgrade advantage. This is my timing to kind of, this is why I'm playing aggressive. This is where he has to play passive. So I'm double expanding because I had a lot of money in the bank. I'm also adding on more gateways. More gateways the better. It's got a planetary fortress there. There's no way I'm going to be able to kill that. DT's over here helping me out. DT's definitely a nice thing in the late game. So DT timings should be around your 3 base. Once you have 3 base fully saturated, you should be throwing down a DT shrine. It's not only to help against drops, but it's also good to help pull apart Terran. Let's say you have DTs here, here, and here. Yes, he does have missile turrets here, but he also has to make sure he focuses on the DTs itself. If he pulls the SCVs to kill the DTs will kill so many SCVs, he's not going to even, it was pointless to even have a turret there in the beginning. So he's going to have to like pull some units over there to kind of focus fire the DTs and have them all spread out, kill attachments or add-ons, and that's even better. Let's say we took away these 2 reactors on the starport. You know what that means? That means his Vikings and his medevac count is going to be greatly reduced because he's not going to be able to produce them as fast as he is with if he had reactors on them in the first place. So my observer scouts, I see his ghosts way out of position. I don't see any ghosts at all. So that's why I was playing very aggressive with my High Templars and got some pretty good storms. Okay, so now this is where I should have done this a little bit sooner. Usually whenever you get a 4th base, and that's the only reason why I haven't gotten it sooner, because he canceled my 4th. But once you have a 4th base stabilized, you want to start adding on more robos. The reason why you want to have more robos, this actually comes back to a different matchup, PvZ. What is the most annoying thing? Oh, that doesn't make sense. What is the most annoying thing that Zerg can do? Besides doing the swarm host, of course. And the thing is the meta switch or tech switch. Let's say they go from mutas into swarm host or swarm host into mutas or something like that that causes you to have to completely change your army composition. The same thing applies here in PvT. Terrans feel that pain because for Protoss, it's a lot easier for us to transition than it is for Terran. You know, having 3 robos adding on, and that means I can make 4 Colossus at a time as long as I have the resources. And that's what I was talking about. If you're able to secure a 4th base, this is when you want to start doing this. Another thing you want to do, you can see how I've always had Storm every single time. So another thing you want to do in PvT is you want to make sure you have some Templars just sitting back gathering up energy. Whenever you do a push, have Templars sitting back. Even if you're not doing a push, have them somewhere else away from your army, just gathering up energy. So that way, once your first batch of High Templars die, or you make them into Archons, you have another batch of High Templars to go with. So let's say you storm, make them into Archons, you go back, grab those High Templars that you had, say, that was preserving energy, and bring them into your army. Go ahead and go for the engagement. While you're bringing it, though, you want to make sure you warp in new High Templars, so that way they can preserve, they can gather up more energy, and then you can use Storm from there. You can see how this is really, really difficult for him to fully commit into a pressure. It's because of the extra High Templars that I'm able to keep. Now, This is where I was talking about the transition phase of Protoss. It's a lot. This becomes really difficult for Terran. It's because look what's in the production. He's making medevacs. Let's say he doesn't make medevacs. He's making Vikings. Then he's blindly assuming that I'm going into mass Colossus, right? If he does not have a lot of Vikings or medevacs, the storms will prevail. If I was going for a heavy storm composition, a heavy gateway composition, and I wasn't making any Colossus, because he hasn't seen Colossus in a very long time besides the 2 Colossus that I made in the beginning of the stage. If I wasn't making those Colossus and I just stayed on heavy ground army that was Colossus-less, Colossus-free, I don't know. And he was making Vikings, those Vikings become kind of useless. You know, you can drop them obviously and they can start dealing damage to the ground army, but they have shitty damage. It's not that strong, and they're not that beefy, so you're not really getting anything from them. So they start making mass. So instead of making Vikings, they make the medevacs. And that's where it gets wrong for them, because let's say you randomly pop up with 4 Colossus, and they don't have any Vikings, but you have a pretty big army supporting the 4 Colossus. He's in trouble because he has nothing to kind of deal with the Colossus. He doesn't have enough Vikings to deal with it. So what he has to do, he has to retreat and probably sack a base or something. He's gonna have to pull something out of nowhere to be able to come back from that kind of surprise tactic. And that's the strength of Protoss in late game PvT. The mid game, obviously, it's in favor of Terran because of the aggressive drops. But like I said, if you have observers all over the map and you have pretty good map awareness by checking the mini map, you should be a-okay. Like, honestly, we'll go over it a little bit. So he's gonna try to drop here. He's really nice with him. That's actually doing quite a bit of damage. He's actually bringing up more supply for me, so I'm not sure I like that. Just thinking about it, that means less probes for me, which means a bigger army for me. So I'm not sure that's like the best thing for him. This is the other good thing about DTs. Can help set up contain. By contain, I mean the amount of bases he can have. So I was trying to preserve him on these 4 bases, and that's it. While I have 5 bases of my own, but it looks like he's gonna kill those 4th base with a pretty good job. And that's because I don't have an observer up here spotting. If I have an observer there, I could be spotting. This observer serves no purpose because I have the watchtower. So yeah, I should probably move this up here. And then move this observer over here because I need to see where his army's at. So now I have my Colossus, and he realizes that. Now he's making Vikings, but it's a little bit too late. How many Vikings does he have? He has 3 Vikings, that's it. And they're over here. He's out of position. How does he deal with these 3 Colossus? He can't. He has all these ghosts, that's good for High Templars, but I mean, if you look, the Templars are all the way back here. He's not going to be able to do anything. Storms. The biggest damage dealers though is my Colossus count. He just does not have enough Vikings to kill them off quickly. Like you see, you do end up trading armies blow for blow. So it's not the worst thing in the world for him. But the problem is in PvT, it's a lot easier for Protoss to reinforce because of the warping mechanic. This matchup literally is kind of like PvZ or ZVP, where in PvT we are playing the role of the Zerg player, where we're able to reinforce quicker, and we should abuse the fact that we can tech switch in and out between High Templar based compositions to Colossus based compositions, and the Terran has to react to our transitions. If they don't react to our transitions correctly, they suffer a lot of damage, as you can see from here. And so now he's kind of contained. This base is now pretty much dead. At this point, he's not going to be able to mine from there. His army's trapped. He can't really support that at all. Like, he can't defend this base at all. So this base is dead, and there's the GG from him. This is pretty much how you want to kind of deal with PvT late game. I know people... I know some people have troubles with PvT late game, so I'm hoping this will help you out. Just remember, just treat it like ZVP, where you're the Zerg player. What is really annoying to the threat of the tech switch, going from like a Hydroling army into mutas, mutas into swarmos, swarmos into mutas, things like that are really difficult for Protoss. And the only way we can kind of defend that is if we react on time. And that's the same thing with Terrans. We can reinforce quicker because of the warpins, and they can't because they have barracks. They have to. So because of that, they have to make sure they have the most efficient army that can deal with my army. So if I'm having Colossus, he needs Vikings. If I have High Templars, he's gonna need Ghost. And it goes back and forth from there. So anyways, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please follow me on Twitch and Twitter. I hope you do like these dailies as well. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't and you like what you see. You can check out my website at flatlinesec2.com for a more organized way of browsing through my content. You might find some replays as well that you might like, or anything in Protoss in general. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you later.